What's up, everybody? Soren Baker here on Unique Access. Today we're joined by Big Les. Big Les, thanks for coming through.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we got a best album, and Big Les has selected one of the best, most acclaimed rap albums in rap history, Nas' Illmatic.
Woo. First of all, the pressure of that question of picking the best rap album, you know, with so many favorites and so many artists that you love.
Right.
But I'm a Queens girl.
Right.
And you know, Nas lives down the way.
Right.
And of course, his effect on me in the 90s was just like, he made me feel things that I kind of never felt before, at least listening to any other rapper.
Okay.
You know, our journeys, even though we lived very close neighborhood-wise, were totally different because I didn't grow up in the projects.
I was gonna say, I didn't think you were from Queensbridge, Liz.
I'm literally 2 miles from Queensbridge.
Okay.
But there's a lot that happens in those 2 miles that
say,
changes our
it's
journey.
a little
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's a whole lot different. But it made me kind of feel how close this was at my fingertips and how our realities were completely different.
Right.
You know, like I went to school with people, high school, junior high school with people from Queensbridge, you know. Sometimes you go hang out over there, sometimes you don't.
Right.
If you know what I'm saying, especially after hours if the street lights are off, you know. And to just really be like, this is in my backyard.
Right.
And the things that he's experiencing and the things that he was feeling and the things that he would talk about. And what's interesting for me is that I ended up having to interview Nas a lot in the 90s, and you know, with Rap City and everything.
Right.
And so we spent a lot of time over at D&D Studios and Battery Studios and Unique Studios, like all these studios where the history, the minute you walk into the room and the plaques on the wall, and you can kind of just feel the beats just and the stories that want to be told there.
Right, right.
And I learned a lot from his album and that whole 94-ish era of music.
Yeah,
You know?
Came out in 1994, and with the album, one of the things that I thought really struck me about the album was that there was such a delay. You know, we had Halftime and Ain't Hard to Tell, and then the album didn't come out. And at that time, that was, I don't want to say it was never happening, but for an album that had so much anticipation, to have those, you know, noticeable and or really big singles, and then the album didn't come immediately, I was kind of like getting worried.
Right.
So
right.
for you, like when you heard those two songs, especially since they were both out and both released before, like, do you remember thinking or wondering what the delay was or what was happening?
Well, I think it's different than when you're in the industry versus not being in the industry, because you know that there's always some bullish going on, some politics, whether it's Columbia Records or whether the artist is not showing up and he's not happy, or he's arguing with his A&R. So I've seen it 1,000 times. So when I hear a delay or that there's a surprise and we didn't hear anything about like his health or he's on track, like it wasn't anything like that, then you
business as usual.
It's business as usual.
As EPMD would say.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay, so that being said, when I first got Illmatic, I remember thinking that it was very short. So, for you, given that it's one of your best albums, in this instance, do you think less is more, or when you were listening to it, did you want to hear more?
I love Nas, period, so I can kind of listen to him all day. But in this instance, for me, less was more.
Okay.
Like, it was concise, it was to the point, it painted great imagery for me to feel like I grew up in the projects. Like that I'd be sitting there, you know, on a stairwell where you don't want to be and all the stuff is going down, or you get trapped up in the elevator, or like you're out in the front on the benches. Like, I kind of got it, I understood it, and I felt it, and I didn't feel like I missed out on anything that he didn't share.
Yeah, and I mean, right when the album, after you get past the intro, the album goes right into New York State of Mind, which in my opinion may be Nas's best song, or one of his best songs for sure, but probably one of, if not his best, one of his best songs.
Yes, no question.
So that obviously DJ Premier produced, and is an iconic song that he's remade, and other people have you know, done their own renditions of it. But for you, what stood out so much about New York State of Mind?
It's tough being, well, it's not tough. When you're a New Yorker, you know what I'm saying? There's things that you can relate to that nobody else can. The smells and the grit and the grime. New York is not like what it used to be, or what it was growing up for me. You guys go to New York now and it's like Universal Studios. Like, you guys will never know what it is to have the Israelites on the corner preaching, you know, the break dancers on the cardboard, or the porn shops open like every 2 steps, and know what it is to ride the iron horse with all the graffiti and the rats. Like, you'll never get it. So for me to hear that New York state of mind and kind of relate it to what my hustle is, or know how I have to flow or maneuver through the streets, even though I didn't sell drugs and you know I wasn't at gunpoint every 2 seconds, I know what that was. And so for me, it resonated with, well, thank God that's not my reality, but yo, that's like right down the block. And then you know people from school, and yo, you heard so-and-so got shot, and like all of that just kind of makes it feel real personal. And that's how that album felt to me. It was like really personal, because it could have been my cousins. I got cousins in the Bronx who grew up, you know, in some crazy projects and whatever the case is, and all those stories parallel each other.
And he also kept it personal by having his father on there on Life's a Bitch at the end, which obviously features AZ. So, you know, when you were hearing that song and realizing that was his dad playing the horn at the end, did that change or alter your perception of the song at all?
Well, I knew his father was a musician, and we were going to interview his father at one point, but it never happened.
Okay.
So I had kind of done my homework a little bit about it, but it made perfect sense that his talent came from a place that wasn't too far from home. Okay. The only thing that was shocking about it is because most people in the project don't have their fathers around. You know, so the fact that this man who grew up in the PJs was a great storyteller and still had a male figure in his life that he was close to kind of shined a different light on Nas, that you just kind of like, damn, every kid should have their father with them, because look at what can happen. Right. You know, you talked about DJ Premier, and DJ Premier, during that era, there was something that was just going on with him where everything he touched turned to not just gold, literally, but figuratively in regards to the music matching the lyrics, you know? Right. And all the other producers who worked on this album, I think Q-Tip was on this album.
Yeah, he did One Love, yeah, Large Professor on
there.
Large
Professor,
LES.
who's a genius, you know. It just came together like tortilla soup. Yep, big up to Pete Rock, like doing his thing. Pete Rock is a genius anyway, so I love him.
Yeah, so Pete Rock, of course, did The World Is Yours. And on that one, you know, the album definitely has a dark kind of overtone, but The World Is Yours, which also has a dark overtone lyrically, you know, it's kind of a different take on the album in the sense that it's like, oh, you can do it, or you have the chance. So for you, hearing a song kind of in this classic album that's also very inspirational, like what impact do you think that had on you? I
think everybody got it in regards to you don't have to be a victim of your environment. Like there's opportunity for you, like look at me, I did this, whatever, and I'm bringing my boys with me, you know what I'm saying? And then here comes Mobb Deep and from Queensbridge and anybody else who comes after that's like kind of really letting you know that this is a reality, like yo, this could be you if you put in the work and stop, you know, messing around in the streets. And because I have seen it firsthand, I think it's different than somebody who lives in Oregon, you know, who doesn't know what the projects looks like or smells like, or has driven by it, or being in that neighborhood on the bodega and the check cashing places on the corner, and you know, the chicken spot over there, the weed spot up inside, and, you know what I mean? Like all of that to me is when I hear people rap about home, and even though my home is different than my house is different than his house, it still is home. And I'm still a product of that environment because it was so close to me, you know? It was just a different perspective, but it made me feel things emotionally, sensitivity-wise. It made me have respect for him because he was such a poet in regards to the pictures that he painted on this album. And I just, you know, was like, damn, he's fine too. Like, I fell in love with Nas all over
That didn't really impact me.
I'm sorry, but you know, ladies, you know what's up, right? Nas QB all day.
Right, and then also with him, he since this is coming after what a lot of people would consider the golden era of rap, you know, Nas was much more, now we were getting into more and more where it was the artist was the focus. We had lost groups to a large degree, we lost the DJs to a large degree, and Nas had all this focus on him, and then in his videos and his performances, you know, he's very stoic but mesmerizing at the same time because of how he moves and how he navigates. So for you, looking at things from a dance or a aesthetic lens, what did you get differently from the videos that you were seeing from Illmatic?
Much more emotional, rather than it being your typical black and white, hanging out with the homies and blah, blah, blah. Because I think the way Nas delivers his rhymes forces you to pay attention. It's almost like reading a book, where you're forced to pay attention kind of to every line, and then you get excited that you want to turn the next page. And so watching his videos for me is kind of like, even though he didn't do any big magic tricks and have a whole bunch of dancers, because whether it was Hype who directed it or Little X or whoever directed it, they kind of dumbed it down or made it kind of come down so that you were forced to really focus on him and the environment behind him and really just kind of match the words to the lyrics. You know, that's what it kind of did for me. I think I watch things differently than other people. I listen to music, obviously, from my hips rather than my ears, just because I'm a dancer, you know what I mean? So it's different the way I receive information.
Okay, so now looking back on Illmatic, why do you think it's the best album?
Oh my God, because the electricity when that album comes on the radio, a song comes on the radio, it ain't hard to tell, whatever comes, and you hear his voice, it takes you to a place in time where, like you said, hip hop changed on its axis. And it wasn't like, yo, what's this? It was like, yo, I fuck with this. Like, you know what I mean? And it kind of forced, I think, everyone to reflect inside about their story, about their journey, to pay attention to the fact that just because so-and-so's got $1 million deal, that they didn't come from money, and that their journey is very similar to yours and his and hers. And it humanized everything. It made everybody close and personal. And I kind of loved it, that whole facade of, I mean, of course we end up going back to it like with Puffy and Mace and the cars and the, you know, the planes, whatever the case is, but this was where it was really about people showing their human side. And Nas, I kind of just stripped back all the layers and wasn't afraid to just like, yo, this is who I am and this is where I come from. Love me or leave me alone.
Well, there it is, y'all. Thanks for coming through Big Les Best Albums, Nas Illmatic.
Love you, Nas.